Welcome to Tales of Hope, where every paw print counts. Animal tie in the house, spreading love, hear the sounds. Every week animal stories, rights and welfare in the mix. Step up, take action, we're giving animals a fix. Tales of Hope, raise your voice, make some noise. Change the game for every animal, girl and boy. One world, one fight, let's turn the page. A future for the voiceless, bring hope to center stage.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, wherever you listeners are. Today, we have a very wonderful personality, Dr. Redford, who is also known as is known as Worldwide Vet, Dr. Cliff.
Yes.
Dr. Cliff, a very good morning to you. I mean, taking up the time to be on the show. Thank you so much.
No
Please.
problem. My pleasure. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Perfect. Let's dive straight into the questionnaire. My first question would be, your work spans the globe. Your documentary highlights rescue missions in places like India, Jamaica, Greece, and even a war-torn Ukraine border. What inspired you to take veterinary care to such far-flung, challenging locations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I started, I'm 52 now, and I started 9 years ago. So when I was 43 years old, my kids joke that it was a midlife crisis, that I was trying to regain some of my youth. They might be partially correct. It was just a wonderful opportunity because I graduated young. I was 24 when I graduated. I started my practice very young at 26. I got married young. My kids had my kids young. So, at 43 years old, 2 of my 3 kids were out of the house at university, and I just had some spare time in my hands, and I loved traveling, and it was just this natural connection. I wanted to go to Jamaica, but I didn't want to go on vacation. I'm not much of a vacation guy, and so working with the Jamaican SPCA for 3 weeks was sort of a perfect fit. And then I got bit by the travel bug. I fell in love with traveling and volunteering, so it's taken me all over the place.
Wonderful. That's such an inspiring story, especially for people like us who are in the late, in the early to mid 50s sort of thing.
That's right. Yeah. Any age, you can do it at any age.
Absolutely. I mean, I think age is just a number. I mean, if you look at it.
That is true. That is true. I feel, like I said, I'm 52. I don't feel any older than 54.
Almost like me. I'm 55. Okay. I understand you also have a TVO documentary, and your profile shows that you started volunteering locally for Shades of Hope and then went international. How did your journey from a local wildlife sanctuary to overseas rescue missions began, actually?
Yeah, and it was sort of like a chicken or the egg question. So I actually started traveling first, again, to Jamaica. And when I went to Jamaica, within a couple of days, I was dealing with wild animals or dealing with exotic animals. It started with a crocodile that I had to do surgery on. And while I'm a very good surgeon, and I graduated from one of the top schools in the world and qualified, at least as far as legalities, to treat all wildlife and all species, I didn't have the skill set that I wanted. And I knew if I was going to keep traveling, especially with my next trip being to India, India #1, because I've been there, I've been to your country several times. I knew I needed to learn more about animals other than cats and dogs. So I started volunteering at Shades of Hope, and that started about 7.5 years ago. I was literally just there yesterday doing surgery on a red-tailed hawk and a ring-billed gull and a possum, all kinds of cool animals. But the volunteer work was only supposed to be for 6 months. I was going to do 1 day a week, 6 months, kind of learn some other species, improve my skills. Well, I loved it so much and it improved my skills so much. Again, 7 years I've been there 1 day a week. So they got me good. They got me hooked. I'm addicted to the wild animals. I come home sometimes smelling like skunk, but it's a fun price to pay.
Honestly, yes. I mean, being with animals, whether those are wild animals or the small animals, I think I believe it's basically a calling which is natural to all of us, you know. I mean, we
Yeah.
just, I mean, I don't know whether I should say this or not. I think we prefer being more with animals than being with humans.
It definitely depends on the human. Yes, I would agree. It definitely depends on the human, and if my dog doesn't like you, I don't even take the time. My dog can figure these things out pretty well. One of the things I sort of had learned and talked about, not only in various YouTube videos that I've done, and I'm in the middle of just finishing up writing a book, so hopefully you'll have me on again in a year when it's published through a legit publisher. I'm very excited. But one of the things I'd sort of learned is no matter how different the culture is, for example, India, so many different religions, very different than Canada, different languages, definitely different food, very spicy, very yummy. No matter how different the people are, most of us share this incredible fascination with animals and want to respect them and give them the care that they deserve. So it's something that brings people together from all walks of life.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree with you on this. It's just that I think we all have this common goal where we just want to give them the dignity what they deserve, which rightfully they deserve, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. We need to, I try and finish off a lot of my podcasts with the saying, be kind to animals. And we do need to be kind to them. And it means also being kind to the human animals. All of us, animals and people, just want to live in peace and prosperity and respect. So it's a great life lesson.
Absolutely. Moving forward, your daughter Emily often accompanies you on these adventures. How did Emily become involved, and what is it like sharing these emotional rescue experiences as a father and a daughter team?
Yeah, my little Emily, we call her my little Scooch. That's her nickname. She's now 23, I believe. Yeah, 23 years old. I got to do the math this early in the morning. She's incredible. So she's not a veterinarian. She's not going to be a veterinarian. All of her training has been sort of on the field or in the field training. And how did this come about? So again, India, my first trip to India 7 years ago, was her first trip anywhere around the world, like anywhere outside of North America. So talk about a culture shock. She was 17 years old. She was 17 years old when she came to India. We went to Hyderabad. Different than what's in the documentary, though I guess it touches on it a little bit. And she had seen the passion and the enjoyment I was having, and she's very much like me, very adventurous, willing to work hard. She's one of my best friends, and so it was a natural fit. She had done some volunteer work with me at Shades of Hope, and it was actually, and it still is, she's better at doing a lot of like bandaging on birds than I am, and doing some of the anesthetic monitoring while I'm doing surgery. So she quickly became my right-hand girl, and there are definitely surgical cases and rescue cases that I could not do without her. And as far as how is it? It's spectacular. I think it's every parent's dream to be able to experience these life changing memories with one or all of their children, and some of my other kids have joined me on some of the other trips, and this is something that we're going to have forever. And one day I can tell my grandchildren, yeah, I went to India with your mom, or India or Panama or Cairo or Greece, and she came to the border of Ukraine and Poland, the Arctic North. She's been so many places with me, and I love it. She's amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, there can be no better bonding between a parent, with their children, when it comes, sharing the same passion and the bond. If I'm to believe it.
It's incredible. And one fun story regarding Emily. So when we went to the Ukraine-Polish border, this is right when the war had broken out, maybe 3 weeks into it, and we were sort of helping refugees, or I guess they wouldn't be considered refugees, but people fleeing the war from Ukraine, going into the Polish border. They had their pets with them. They couldn't cross the border if their pets weren't vaccinated. So that's how we were able to help out. But then near the end, there came an opportunity. We had a few extra days for us to do other volunteer work. And right at this border, there was all kinds of different charities. And while I was setting up to do an interview, kind of similar to this one, a live interview on my phone, she ended up walking around and she found a charity called Siobhan's Trust, based out of the UK. And they feed refugees, people escaping wars, that sort of thing. So she agreed, yeah, my dad and I are going to volunteer for you. So she started volunteering there an hour or two before me, which means she had seniority, which means all of a sudden she was no longer Dr. Cliff's daughter. It was the opposite. I was now Emily's dad. So everyone knew her more than they knew me. And it was she toted that seniority over me quite often. She's like, I have seniority over you. You got to do what I say. And she was right. It was wonderful. So it was nice for her to get out of my shadow. And yeah, she just shines like a star. It's wonderful.
These are the memories, I think, which will stick for the rest of our lives, with as a parent.
Yeah. And that's all we want, right? That's what we want.
Absolutely. In one of your missions, you rescued a dog during India's Diwali festival. Can you tell us the story of that dog and what it felt like saving an animal during such a significant cultural event in India?
Yeah, great question. We had gone back to Hyderabad 2.5, almost 3 years ago now. So it would have been 2022 Diwali, so in October. And we were going to film the documentary that you talked about at the beginning of this podcast. And basically the fireworks of Diwali sometimes scare animals. And this dog had become frightened and had fallen down a well. And I've had quite a lot of rope experience, what we call rope and climbing experience. So I know how to rappel, and I know how to do belaying and all these different sort of rescues. So I rappelled down into this well, and it's how the documentary starts. It starts with me sort of rappelling down into this well and just gets crazier from there. A couple of funny memories from that. I mean, the dog did great, and we were able to hook it up with a net. We're working with this great group from your country called Animal Warriors Conservation Society, and we scoop up this dog minutes before it was going to drown, and we're feeding it all these biscuits and cookies, and then it tried to get away from me because he's just like, okay, I'm fine, leave me alone. And he almost fell back into the well. We're like, oh no. But the funny thing is we were filming it, and it had just come after a incredibly long rescue night. The night before, we hadn't gotten in until about 3:00 in the morning. So we were like, you know what, let's sleep in. Nothing usually happens in the morning. And we were all meeting the camera crew for brunch, basically, at the hotel, when we got a call from Animal Warriors saying, hey, we need you, there's this dog. And so the camera crew wasn't ready, and we're like, we can't wait. So Emily and I and the director Diego jump in the vehicle and drive, and he filmed it all on, Emily used her iPhone and he used his little hand camera. But the joke was, as I came up with this dog and save this dog, then he was like, hey, that was great, could you do it again? Which of course we couldn't, and he was totally, I was like, are you kidding? I might have swore, and he's like, no, I got it, I'm just kidding. And it ended up being a phenomenal story, and what a great way to open the documentary. But it's a real worry there, with the fear of these fireworks in these tight communities, in these cities. I mean, Hyderabad's enormous. It's got 10 million people there. So it kind of reminded me, it was a little scary too, because it was only like 3 months after I went back to Ukraine. I'd gone back to Ukraine on my own into the war zone. And there was a lot of bombing and a lot of bullets and things like that. So the fireworks kind of made me jump a little bit in Diwali. It reminded me a little bit about the trauma that was happening for my last trip. But again, what a beautiful country, what a beautiful people, what a beautiful group of religions, and Hyderabad has the spiciest food in the world I've ever. Even people in the other parts of India talk about how spicy the food is in Hyderabad,
It's,
in the south.
I'll tell you what. It's not only in the south, in southern part of India, but even uh, if you look at India, the northern part, or whether you're looking down south or north or east or west, uh, the food and the spices is
So good.
something that it's like something which it's just inherited. It's the ancient culture and the history that India has inherited from its.
It's it's so good, and we struggled as white people who don't aren't used to that, who don't have that palate. We struggled, and it was funny. We would, to get away from talking about animals for a second, we would ask people at the restaurant. We'd be like, less spice or not spicy, and they would, of course, yeah, of course. And we realized that it's an adjective, right? It's a description. It's not quantitative. So less spice. So they would put on less spice, but it was still way too much. We ended up, and then we would even say no spice, and they were confused. What do you mean no spice? Like, how can we do that? So we finally figured out we could switch it, and we could be like, no hot spice, just salt, or we would have to add something for flavor. But now when I'm here back in Canada and we have a great South Asian community in the Toronto area, I live in Toronto. I can go to these Indian food places and order the spiciest dish because they're used to regular Canadians, and I'm now a little bit used to Hyderabad food. But I do miss it. It is so good. The food is so flavorful.
Perfect. You know, uh, taking back, going back a bit, you said, there was a lot of trauma you had to deal with, uh, even with the animals. And you said you also visited Ukraine, which was war torn. How do you handle that trauma?
Yeah, it's difficult.
Emotionally.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared for that second trip in Ukraine. I thought I was, but I ended up having some symptoms of almost like a pre PTSD, like a pre-trauma stress disorder going into Ukraine. A lot of nightmares, a lot of stress. I was by myself. When I was there, I managed. It was like my body and my brain and my heart just kind of said, okay, you don't have time to get stressed right now. And there are times like I'm doing surgery in the clinic where the veterinarian had left in Kharkiv with this animal rescue group. And if a missile landed near the clinic, the whole clinic would shake. And there are times that a high ballistic, what do they call it? I think a high ballistic missile landed so close to my apartment that everything shook and all the alarms went off. It was quite terrifying. And there were some problems post trip. I came home and I didn't have to speak to a therapist. I chose to speak to a therapist, which is very important. I think with all of this stuff, and back to, because most veterinarians aren't going to a war-torn country, this is animal rescue is tough work. It's tough emotionally and physically, and being with my daughter on these trips helps. We celebrate the victories. We hug each other with the failures. I'm in my basement gym right now, and I have a big gym behind me. I do a lot of boxing and things like that actually really help me. If I have a stressful day, I come home and work out. And, well, I work out regardless. And so having those escapes is important. Being a veterinarian is a key identity in my life, but it's not my only identity. So having those other things that are important to you, family and friends and sports and, maybe meditation or yoga, or I do surfing, which is kind of meditative. All of these things help deal with the stresses of life. And this is something it's obviously not unique to being a veterinarian or being a worldwide vet, being a world traveling vet. We all have stresses in our lives, and we have to learn to embrace them, not try and hide them, and share the experiences with sometimes people you just met online on a podcast like we're doing right now. Don't try and push your feelings away. You know, um, my voice cracks just talking about it because I'm very emotional because I don't hide it. Yeah, you have to accept that there's challenges and difficult times in life, and it makes the wonderful times even more wonderful. So just embrace it and have those other ways of escaping it.
Absolutely, because I've been speaking to quite a few vets, in terms of uh, animal rescue, welfare, and with all the trauma and all the other issues they go through, which you just mentioned rightly. Uh, let let your vulnerable side out, open. I mean, talk
Hmm.
about it rather than hiding, because I think when you talk, you heal automatically. That's what it is. That's what I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, when I come home and my wife asks me how my day was, if it was really bad, I tell her. If we lost a patient, I tell her. She's not a veterinarian. She's not a scientist or, a healthcare practitioner like that. She runs her own business, but she still gets it. And even if she didn't, like just me talking about it and being honest, as you said, the voicing it heals. So it's very, very important.
Absolutely. From what I understand, you've had a very promising surgery which you performed in Jamaica on a crocodile.
Hmm.
What was that experience like, and how did you prepare for treating such an exotic and dangerous animal?
Yeah, I wasn't prepared at all, and I definitely had some help from the head zoo veterinarian, Dr. Trafford. I had only been in, so again, first trip. I was this young 43 young 43-year-old, and it was day 2 or 3, and I'd already basically just dealt with cats and dogs, so I was in my comfort zone. And then we went to the zoo, and they're like, "Hey, there's this crocodile we want you to film," because again, we're doing it for filming as well, and his name's Jack. And Jack, this American crocodile who had been shot in the eye with a spear gun from a very frightened farmer. It wasn't anger or evil doing. They were frightened, and so it was rushed to this zoo, and they said we gotta remove the eye, and so Jack became one-eyed Jack, and I was like, I've never removed an eye on a crocodile before. And Dr. Crawford said, just pretend it's a really scaly dog. And the funny thing is it's the same. It is the same as a really scaly dog. Now the anesthetic's a little bit different. And at one point we gave a sedative into the muscle under the tail because there's very few places you can give injections to. They're covered in this armor, this dinosaur-like armor, and the sedative didn't take enough. So when we gave a nerve block, he did a gator roll or a crocodile roll, and was dragging the person on top of him who was holding him down. Now his snout, his jaws were taped shut, and everyone was safe, sort of. My son, who had come with me at the time, was 17, 18, and a national level judo fighter and wrestler. So this strong kid, right? He's holding the tail, and even sedated, this crocodile lifted him up off his feet by
Wow.
swinging his tail. So it was quite a challenge. But once we got the anesthetic figured out so that Jack was comfortable, removing the eye was just like doing it on a very, very, very scaly dog, and he did great. But that was the introduction that made me realize when I get back, I need to volunteer. I need to get some wildlife experience because sooner or later, I'm gonna have to do something on a wild animal that's not like doing it on a scaly dog. And then later, I went to India and I had to deal with all the cool and crazy animals you guys have there. So it was wonderful. It reminded me of when I was a child and I wanted to be a vet and I wanted to do these cool and crazy creatures. So I'm living my dream now.
Perfect. That's such a wonderful story, For people who are not familiar with the wildlife, what you've explained is such beautifully, because handling such a big animal, especially like crocodile, it's not very easy for everybody, And really, that must have been some challenge.
It was so crazy. I mean, in Jamaica, other than the cats and dogs, which themselves were wonderful and so enjoyable and rewarding to do that work, we ended up doing some work with a turtle rescue, so little newly hatched hawksbill sea turtles, this crocodile. We went cave hiking deep underground in the St. Clair Caves. And learned about the microbats, the greater funnel-eared bat in Jamaica, and even climbed up the Hellshire Hills to an iguana sanctuary to work with the Jamaican iguanas. So we were all over the place. There was one point I was snorkeling, and there was a fish that had been trapped in a net that had been thrown out. And the fish was basically dying because it couldn't swim. So I was able to give it sort of air quotes CPR by making it swim on it. Like I helped it swim through the water, and then it brought the water through the gills and the oxygen into the gills, and we woke the fish back up. So we were doing everything above land and under the ocean as well.
Wow, these are such inspiring stories, honestly.
It was so much fun.
Absolutely. I also understand you've been working remotely and extreme environment life, and Arctic winter in igloo.
Yeah.
Is tough. During a recent 9-day trip, you completed a 25 surgery in freezing conditions. What challenges did you face working in Arctic, and how did it differ from a typical vet clinic?
Yeah, so great question. Iqaluit is the capital. They call it a city. It's only 7,000 people, but it's the largest community in this northern territory in Canada. So it's the city, the capital city of Nunavut. 7,000 people, no veterinarian. And these are people that are, teachers and government workers and, police officers and doctors and bakers and whatever they're doing. So they have their pets with them, and a lot of them come up from Ottawa, which is our capital city, the country's capital city. So they bring their pets with them, and they have no veterinarian because the vet left like 5 or 6 years ago. So when we were asked to go up, there are other vets who go up there, but they go in the summertime. We're the only ones crazy enough to go in the winter. And again, my daughter joined me on my first trip. My daughter and my son Brandon, and then we went on a second trip where Emily and Brandon and then my technician Arthur joined me. And I'm glad, first of all, we went up in the wintertime, in January. Now there's only about 3 hours of sunlight. The rest is dark. And we don't really get to see the sun anyways because we're working in the clinic. And it is minus 40 Celsius there.
Wow.
So it's very cold. It's very cold.
That's
very,
freezing.
very cold. It is very, very cold. Like painfully cold. But if you dress properly, it's fine. It was so beautiful when we went up there. The ice and the snow, and although there's not a lot of sunlight, when the sun is barely coming up over the horizon, it's like this 2 or 3 hour sunrise sunset combo. So everything is this beautiful blue and almost angelic white. It's so pretty. And then the northern lights are so beautiful, the aurora borealis. Now, the challenges being up there, even though there's a vet clinic, they didn't have a working x-ray machine, obviously no laboratory. So it taught us, or reminded me and taught the rest of my team, that we know a lot more than we think we do, and we don't always have to rely on these fancy machines to confirm diagnoses. There are a couple of bladder surgeries I did, one on a dog, one on a cat, where they had bladder stones, or I guessed they had bladder stones based on physical exam and history. We had to basically say, look, Mr. Smith, we got to roll the dice. I think your dog's got bladder stones. I can't just keep giving antibiotics. And thank goodness I was right. And the dog did great, and we removed the bladder stones. So that was the biggest challenge, is they have good medications like anesthetics and whatnot, but it's really limited on diagnostics. So you learn to use your hands and your ears and your eyes more and your stethoscope and looking at the history and asking the right questions. So all of these trips make me a better veterinarian. I think they make me a better person as well. So it's why we continue to go up to Iqaluit and why we continue to go up in the wintertime, because we're a little bit glutton for punishment. And we haven't lost any of our fingers or toes yet from the cold. So hopefully we're doing things right. That's right. Cross our fingers.
Cross our fingers, touch wood, please. I mean, we need all your fingers and everything, in place.
Please.
For all the good work you're doing, I mean, it's such an humanitarian work you're doing, and we don't want to lose somebody like you, please.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Perfect. Now, there's another thing in Iqaluit mission also involved vaccinating 70 dogs and a cat in one day due to rabies concern. How do wildlife diseases like rabies from Arctic foxes affect your approach to vet care in these environments?
Yeah, and that was a very important vaccine clinic that we ran. Some of the community up in Iqaluit are very, they're struggling financially, a lot of sort of socio-economic challenges up there. So they're excited when we did this free rabies clinic. And rabies is a big threat there, primarily from the Arctic fox. But it's nothing like it is in your country. Like India is unfortunately the capital of for rabies. So my understanding is about 50,000 people a year die from rabies, mostly children, and almost all of them, or at least the majority, are from your country, from India. And so I'm going to flip the question and talk about it in India, because on my first trip to India, working with People for Animals Rescue, PFA, and Blue Cross, we were doing some street rescues, and this is going to sound so like dumb, like I should have known better. I knew about rabies, and I've been rabies vaccinated, as has my daughter and whatnot. So we're traveling the streets with the ambulance, with the paravets, and we're going to look after a community dog, not a homeless dog, not a stray dog. They live on the streets, but they're taken care of by the community, who might have something stuck in his throat because the way he's swallowing, and he seems to be in pain because he's not very happy. And we went up there, and the dog was nervous and tried to escape, and I blocked his escape, and he then started lunging and trying to bite at me. He didn't get me. We were able to eventually net him and sedate him. And then I went in and, while he was sedated, I'm looking down his throat to see, did he break a tooth? Did he cut his tongue? What is causing this pain? And I couldn't find anything. And I said to the paravet, I don't know what's going on. That's the term we use for technicians, or you guys use for technicians. And the gentleman said to me, "It's rabies, sir." And I was so like, what? How? I've just been examining this dog with my hand down its throat. Are you serious? And he says, "Yeah, it's probably rabies, sir." And unfortunately it was. We had to humanely euthanize it. So it ended up being it was almost like a slap across the face for me to smarten up and realize that this is a real disease, and people carry diseases that they give to animals, and animals carry diseases that they give to us. And everyone needs to be careful. And, for the children and the families out there listening to this, please talk to your kids. If your child gets bitten by an animal, if they go to the doctor right away, the success rate is basically 100%. But the problem is the child thinks they're going to get in trouble for playing with that raccoon in Canada, or that street dog, that community dog in India. So please tell your children, look, if you get bit by an animal, I'm not going to be mad. You need to tell me so we could take you to the doctor. But just don't make them afraid of animals, because animals need to be respected. But so it's a challenge, and it's when I go to these countries, or even up to Iqaluit, I'm dealing with diseases that we don't see in Canada, or we don't see in Toronto. So it expands my brain and my knowledge, and I love it. It's a good challenge, but I need to smarten up a little bit and realize that I can catch diseases from these animals too, and I have to be a little bit more careful.
You know, what you rightly mentioned, there's a lack of education and awareness in our country. And what you rightly said, parents need to educate their children. But more than that, even the parents need to get educated in this country when it comes to, dealing with issues related to animals. And what you rightly said, in India, probably you're looking at 50,000. But to be honest, we don't have the right numbers in this country as yet. And also there is a lot of miscommunication that goes out, that rabies is only transferred from dogs, but they don't understand rabies is not only through dogs, but it can come from any animal.
Yeah. I mean, it can't come from birds. It's not spread through birds, but basically mammals.
Yes.
Cats are very unlikely to have rabies. We have a marsupial here in Canada called the Virginia possum, and it's not native to Canada. It's come from the mid US and has become a Canadian citizen, I guess. Maybe it likes our politics better. That's probably the case. But like opossums look scary, but they're not. They're super sweet. They actually cannot get rabies. They eat ticks, so they reduce our risk of getting Lyme disease. There's another disease from animals, et cetera, et cetera. So, there's a lot of animals that can carry rabies. Here in Canada, it's primarily bats, raccoons, skunks. We just had a coyote at Shades of Hope, a little coyote pup that might have rabies. So I'm getting a call from public health soon to have a conversation. They're going to ask me if I was careful, which I was. I learned from my situation in India all those years ago. We need to educate ourselves. We need to educate the community, children's, adults, everybody. Animals deserve our respect, and they also deserve their space.
Absolutely.
So it'll make life better for all of us.
Absolutely. Now, with very limited resources in remote areas, how do you adapt your veterinary practice when you don't have all the usual equipment or supplies?
Yeah, how do we? It's tricky. It's tricky sometimes, and it's a challenge. I've become very good at it, so that you learn things as you go on these trips. I'm using often on these trips. I'm having to use injectable anesthetics that we don't use anymore in Canada. For example, one of them is Rompin or xylazine in dogs. We use it for wild animals and for other species. But when I was in vet school in the 90s, I did a paper on why we don't use xylazine anymore in dogs. And yet that's pretty much all we use when I'm in India or South America or Africa. So I quickly had to learn some of my old lessons and learn how to adapt. The biggest thing, though, is I always work with other rescues. I work with either veterinarians or animal technicians, like veterinary technicians, veterinary nurses, or paravets in your country. The big thing is listen to them. For professionals out there listening to this, doctors, veterinarians, lawyers, whatever, carpenter, whatever you're doing, if you're a master at your trade, you still need to sometimes close your mouth and open your ears and listen to the people that don't have as many certifications as you, but might have more experience with that particular scenario. And so that's another thing I've learned on this trip, is to be a little bit more humble and to listen to the people. This is, when I went to India, this was their country. This is your people's country. The people I'm working with, they know better than I do how to deal with some of these species and how to deal with, again, the lack of some of the diagnostics or tools. And boy, does it, I've said it before, boy, does it make you a good veterinarian when you're, I'm having to do spays and neuters on cats and dogs in the middle of the Panamanian jungle with no electricity, no walls. We're in this sort of like makeshift building that's just steel posts and a roof with howler monkeys bouncing around on the roofs and in the jungle around us, howling at us, screaming at us, cheering us on, maybe. So it's quite a cool experience. And then I come home and I have this fancy surgical suite and all the drugs and all the tests and the digital x-rays and the technicians and all these things, it's so easy when I come back because I've dealt with these harder situations. So I just got to trust in the people I'm working with, and trust in the training that I've had. And I think we all know, whatever our profession is, we all know a lot more than we may think we know. We just have to learn from our friends and, sort of take the challenges one step at a time.
Absolutely. Now,